So I've learned a ton from interviews just with local Austin authors about either aspiring authors or more established authors about the business of being an author, and I plan to put this into use documented on the channel by writing and publishing a novella by the end of the year. A little crazy, but it gets me to actually apply all of these things and show you how I'm doing it. So like and subscribe, stay tuned if you want to follow that specific journey, but I thought a good place to start out would just be to review some of the step-by-step tutorials on how to self-publish. Some of the most popular ones by Jillian Perkins, Kat Theo, and Mandy Lin were some of the more popular videos that I found on this. And particularly as someone who is a former business coach, an eternal nerd, with a novel sitting on my hard drive that will not be my novella. Maybe I'll resurrect that at some point. But coming from this background of both being a nerd and love reading and writing, but also being a business coach, I'm kind of curious about what are the steps that I would miss being a generalist business coach, or actually more specifically like coding related stuff and tech stuff. What would I miss specifically about the business of publishing from that? And then also coming from a business background, what do I think authors are missing that should be the critical steps in any business, even the business of getting people to buy your books? And spoilers, I think there's two steps that are massively overlooked in general, kind of addressed by one of these videos.
Overlooked. Undervalued.
So with no further ado, I'm going to break down 3 videos, step by step, how to self-publish. I will list the steps, what I learned from them, and maybe some criticisms or things I wish those videos had. So the first video is how to self-publish your first book, step-by-step tutorial for beginners by Jillian Perkins.
So if you are writing your first book, or you wrote it, or you're just thinking about maybe becoming an author in the future, then keep on watching to find out how you can publish your own book for free.
Who is this video for? I think it's authors of chapter books, which he clearly is. This video is a little bit old, so there might be specifics in there that are less relevant, but several of the things like Google Drive is still a thing. So I think this is pretty helpful in general. So what are the steps here? Jillian lists out the obvious first step is to write your book. Wrong! I'll get to that in criticism, sorry. I don't think this is the first step, but I will talk about that more later. Editing the book. All right, this is what a lot of videos talk about being, I don't know if she specifically mentioned this, but this is the longest section. One of the things that I thought was a little bit strange here was that, the first thing she does is spell check and stylistic things. I wonder about, structural editing, or does she just include that in the writing process? Unclear. So it kind of seems like a lot of what she specifically talks about is more copy editing stuff during the editing phase. There is book formatting, the book cover, front, back, and spine. And there is publishing a paperback versus publishing an ebook, 2 different separate routes. And she has some specific recommendations that may or may not have changed about, KDP versus other, for instance, print sources. So what I liked about this video, I liked the specific example of how she organizes things in Google Drives. I always love when you can see a little bit into someone's specific process rather than general advice. So that's great. Where to get help in editing, formatting covers, publishing a paperback book, including some price issue. Again, this is 5 years old, so not everything exactly pertains, but the sites she mentions are still there. There are still, freelancers and other places, so it seemed pretty solid to me. There were recommendations specifically using KDP for the ebook and doing the paperback with CreateSpace. I don't know if that's still a thing. I'll have to cover that in a future video. But that's kind of why you dive into step-by-step beginner tutorial stuff, is to start figuring out oh, all right, this part, CreateSpace is a thing versus KDP. I should dive into that and research that a little bit later. So she made a big deal about Amazon categories, i.e. it might be beneficial to choose a less competitive category in Amazon so that you can get recommended to more people. You can kind of be a big fish in a small pond. This is not surprising to me as a business coach because I'm like, oh yes, there's a general strategy. Choose a niche, and smaller niches are generally better when you're seeking to establish yourself because you can be the big fish in the small pond, but I wouldn't have specifically honed in on that. So this is kind of helpful to get in the zone of like, all right, when we're talking about niches, a big part of niches is Amazon categories. I should do more research on that. So, some bones to pick with this video. She definitely missed some steps from my perspective that I will develop more a little bit in the third video, which I think captured some of these steps, and more at the end because I think even the third video didn't go as deeply as I would like to. But I guess it's 5 years old, so there's more recent stuff. But I think this is also one of the most viewed thing from my experience, or what I've very briefly looked into. Still seems extremely relevant, but like research all the particulars about website if you're looking at this. And the bit about choosing the right category should probably be a consideration even before you start writing. I feel as like when you're starting a business, you want to know what product category you're in. Like writing the book and then figuring out after the fact it seems a little backwards because if you don't fit well into a category, trying to like overhaul the book to be in the category you want afterwards is going to be a whole lot less successful than writing it with that in mind from the beginning. And this ties a little bit into, I think, some of the early steps that are overlooked that really ought to be part of the writing process. So, hi, I'm Alec of Ubiquitous Tavern, and my mission is to fix the internet for sci-fi and fantasy creators. Right now, I'm starting with helping indie and aspiring authors be able to support themselves more with their work. And I would love to get to a place where I can actually help them build better tools than the broken ones we have today that are not about building communities and supporting indie creators so much as massive consumption and advertisement. So, if you are looking for help on either of those things, please like and subscribe. It helps me get the word out to help indie authors right now with the tools that we have. And your subscription also helps me build a platform from which I can create better online tools. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. So the next video I checked out was How to Self-Publish Your Book, Step by Step 2021 by Kat Theo.
I am a self-published author. The first book I have is Layla Escapes the Zoo, and you can find her online on Amazon and many other online platforms. It is print on demand, so that's what I'm going to show you guys today, because I find if you are a first-time author and this is your first book, that is the best way to go.
So this is interesting because it was from a more children's book and print on demand perspective, and it was from the last couple of years. So the interesting thing about the steps, she says she's going to make a separate video about how to promote. That's just one thing as a business person that I'm like, oh, the marketing and the product really ought to be intertwined. And authors really want to compartmentalize. I do think you can think about promoting as a separate step, but the best products are designed for an audience. And, the best marketing is, based on a product designed really well for an audience. Like separating the two out and thinking I'm going to get to promotion at the end is a bad habit for authors. And I think also, again, leads to these mysterious missing steps that I will discuss a little bit later, right? It's that kind of attitude that the business side of the book is separate than writing it. If you want to support yourself by writing, as someone who has been a business coach, it seems really smart for you to think about the entire writing process as a business. It doesn't mean that there aren't creative parts or extremely creative parts or, parts where you're writing the novel where you're focused on the creative aspects, but it does mean that you should probably think about it as a business all the way through, not a separate step that comes at the end. So That's my take. I know a lot of people who are authors hate business, so and yet they want to start one. So life is hard. Life is tricky. But that was just a little beef that I came up that before she got into her steps, that she mentioned that. I'm like, oh, that I cringed a little bit, winced. However, all right, other steps. So she lists as step 1 is to decide to self-publish or go with a publisher. One of the interesting things I've been discovering from interviews with a lot of authors recently and with some publishers is actually, regardless of whether you self-publish or have a publisher, you still have to learn to promote your own book. And so learning the business side of things, right? How to promote your own book is pretty critical. I think a lot of aspiring people, writers who aspire to be traditionally published, think the publisher will do a lot more for getting their book out there than they will. They certainly will help. They certainly are a resource and they have experience, but they also expect you to be really promoting your own book. So, but that's the decision. Self-publish, where you have to do this all on your own, and chances are you will be spending some money paying for an editor, paying for your own book covers, etc. Whereas working with a publisher, they might have more of that stuff lined up for you. They will help give you structural notes on your novel, etc. So anyway, that self-published versus traditional published, I think they're less different than they used to be because you do have to do a lot of your own promoting. But there's definitely from the authors I've talked to, right? There's some powerful advantages to, if you can get an agent and get a publisher, there are advantages to that. If you can't get one, I would say go self-publish and get that experience and improve your writing and improve your craft. Like, get something out the door. Don't just wait for a publisher, and get that experience and iterate. And that will lead you faster to either path, probably, right? That if you can't get a publisher, all right, learn to start the business of self-publishing. And if that's successful, great. If you get a publisher later, you will be in a better position to promote your own work, etc. So, that's okay. That's my commentary on that step. She didn't actually say all of that, but I think calling out that choice is a good one. So write the manuscript. She has. It's interesting. She listed layout and formatting before editing, right, which is reversed. But I can kind of see with a children's book where you have to determine how much of it is going to be on which page, right, and leave space for images, why the layout comes a little earlier. That was just an interesting thing that I wouldn't have thought of specifically if I weren't listening to someone who's talking about their process building a children's book. They talked about the editing process, the illustrations process, cover, it's the same thing, and Kat Theo dropped in a little bit about getting an EIN that's for U.S. tax purposes and ISBN numbers. Great little reminder. The EIN is definitely something, if you're starting a business, that I was more familiar with. Like, I don't know a lot about getting ISBN numbers. I think watching another video, I heard that you actually don't need it for ebooks, but if you are printing one, and if you're doing children's books, like, a lot of the joy of a children's books is like having something tangible to flip through with your kid. So I guess these days there are a lot of people, who also read them on tablets and screens and whatnot, but it does seem like print, especially, and having that ISBN number because it's print, would be pretty critical for children's books. So, all right, so some ideas. I thought just actually as the video of itself had really good editing, I was inspired. I'm gonna have to work on my editing game after watching Kat Theo's videos. Very engaging video anyway. It was kind of short, sweet, to the point. She goes into the basics of working with an illustrator, which I think is helpful if you're considering that. And I already mentioned that the EIN and ISBN is just a good detail. It's something you can figure out when you get there, but it's nice to have the heads up. So my criticisms of this are really just the pattern of thinking about publishing first, then promotion that I mentioned. I think that's backwards. You should think about the publishing and who you're publishing it to and all of that, who you want to read it. If I'm starting a business of any kind that I actually want to make money, I want to make sure there's an audience for it first, and I know what they want, etc. So I think that, that's something where people get into writing, not like they want people to buy their stuff. But the reason why they get into writing is because they like the creative process of writing, not because they like the business. It's kind of rarer that I see an author who really likes the business. One reason why I'm a huge Brandon Sanderson nerd and I've been geeking out about him a ton is that like he's really into the business and improving the business for indie authors. So wow, yeah, he's he's fantastic. Anyway, but that's a pattern I see not just in this video. I think this is like an author culture thing generally, right? That I separate the thing that I love doing, the creative pursuit, from the business, rather than integrate the two, and that's gonna make the business more of a challenge. Yeah, it's gonna handicap you in so many ways. Because for example, if you think about book and promotion separately, one of the things you're going to do when it's time to promote is it will feel awkward and horrible because you're doing the business side of things. It's uncomfortable that you don't like. Whereas if that's kind of all integrated to you, it's a little easier for you to just geek out, which will be a theme on this channel, right? If you're worried about marketing, I have my own marketing hangups. Like, how do I promote myself? This feels awkward. Until, I really had the epiphany that, the marketing and promotion side is really geeking out, and not just about your own work, but the things that inspire you. Like, build a connection, geeking out about your inspiration with other people, and then when you mention, if they feel that connection and they're like, yeah, this person likes the same things and has the same sensibility, if you later then mention that you have a novel, they're probably actually a lot more likely to read it than if you awkwardly go out and being like, I'm in promotion mode, buy my book. Right? Like, it's very different when you, I think, separate the two out. So the third video I found was 9 Steps to Self-Publishing a Book 2022, a beginner's guide to self-publishing a book in 2022. That's a little bit redundant. Anyway, this is by Mandy Lynn.
Hello everyone, my name is Mandy Lynn. I'm an author, book cover designer, and the creator of the Book Launch Planner. And today, let's talk about the basics of getting your book published. So there is 9 basic steps when it comes to publishing your book, and we're going to be talking about them all today.
This is actually not the first or biggest self-publishing how-to step thing that Mandy did. She did one specifically on the process of like KDP that's huge. And that goes into specifically actually how to upload the book. So it wasn't really focused on like the whole process of writing and publishing. So it was really a lot more dialed in than the other video. So I found the smaller video that was the more generalized process. It's actually part of a playlist that includes the KDP and print and other very specific videos. So it was a nice overview for diving into more specific areas. So I think this was a really good resource for that. Focused on novels again. So the steps that Mandy lists is know your market. And when I heard this, it was like a light opened from the heavens. Oh, like this is the step that I've been waiting for a little bit more presented. Like, yes, you should know what people want from your book. And you should listen to the people actually buying books and hear what they want and hear what they don't want and hear their feedback before you write your book. That doesn't mean you have to include everything they want in your book, or that you can never do things they don't want, but you should understand that rather than ad hoc take whatever you feel like writing and then try and sell it to someone not knowing what is their thing. Not only this will help you with what to write, but when it comes time to promoting, you'll know the language, you'll have more confidence because you're saying like, hey, I know people are really interested in this and my book has it, right? Right, it becomes so much easier. Anyway, that know your market. I can tell that Mandy is very organized because her second step was outline the book. So, and she has her own version of that. Seems like a highly organized people. I know, when you get with a bunch of authors, there's the difference between the plotters and the pantsers, right? The people that plot out things in advance and the people that fly by the seat of their pants. She's more of a, outline first. I'm probably like write an outline and discover as you write it that some of it's wrong and revise it kind of in the middle. But anyway, step 2 was outline. Step 3 was write the book. Step 4 was build your marketing plan. I thought this was interesting. And again, coming as a business coach, I'm like, oh, marketing is part of the process. But specifically, her insight was after you've written the book, but before you're editing, take a break to think about some of these marketing plan things before you dive into editing, and just having some distance before you edit helps. And so I thought that was a cool, helpful insight about how this process works for her. Then step 5 was edit the book. Step 6 was cover design and formatting. Step 7 was pre-publishing marketing. Then there's publishing and marketing. So there's marketing along the ways. So the ideas that I got from Mandy, I think her advice is very general about the know your market. I would have wanted more, but like the fact that she's including that is great. She mentions a couple of times a marketing for author series, which I will definitely be buying and reviewing on this channel. I think, she's more of a business person, and it comes across, I think, in kind of one of the criticisms of this. I think, some people are going to feel a little bit sold to, because one, Mandy has some products, has a book and a planner around marketing. And she's kind of also seems to be promoting this other series that as far as I know, that she's not like getting any money from, but she just really likes the marketing series. And so like there's a little bit more of like use these products feel to it. And if you have like really high marketing defenses, you might not like this video. But as someone who wants to not write just to write, but like I want to write as a business, I want to know how writers can get to supporting themselves. And like I have no bones, right? If you're thinking about like that's a pie in the sky dream, like I have no bones that like not everyone who writes a novel is going to, be able to continue writing novels and support themselves doing it. But I'd like to see more indie authors succeed and support themselves. So like I'm into the kinds of stuff that she's marketing, and her books are about her videos are about how to do it. So like I personally, I felt like, okay, this is my jam, rather than like, oh my goodness, this person's selling to me. But I think your feelings about marketing, especially if you have a hard time with it and feel awkward doing it and hate it, you're going to feel awkward when she's selling books on marketing because you feel awkward about marketing. So anyway, but yep, she's a more organized person. She built a planner and outlines before writing, etc. So like, some of that may be less like fly by the seat of my pants, organic discovery based on how you do it. I would say you don't have to be that organized. If it works for you, great. I always encourage people to find systems that work for you, but probably what you want both in marketing and in writing is just consistency. And so if this super structured way gets in the way of you writing consistently, then by all means, be less organized than her. But on the other hand, like give it a shot. You might find it helps you write and promote your work more consistently. I like the fact that several times throughout this process, you're thinking about marketing. And she doesn't go into all the details there, but she does have a series of free videos in addition to the stuff, the planner and the books that she's kind of talking about in this particular video. So I would say like this was exactly what I'm looking for if I'm looking for the business of of being an author, right? There are channels that promote like writing tips or book reviews are the big channels and content that I find. It was very refreshing to find Mandy Lynn's channel where she's like into specifically the business of being an author. This video in particular and her channel in general is probably something that I'm going to lean into a lot because I'm interested in not only how to write my novella and craft it well. The craft is great, like wonderful craft. But I'm also interested into how to promote it successfully, how to get the most out of that book, because it would be very easy for someone like me. I am either an introvert or an extrovert with extreme social anxiety. I'm not sure which. But anyway, like it could be very easy for me to procrastinate the promotion and marketing side of things, even having been a business coach, and just want to focus on the craft and the writing. It is really helpful for me to be absorbing the ideas of someone who is excited about the business side of things. And I think, like, just because she is marketing some stuff, I don't think she did it in a sleazy way. I think she did it in a good way. I think I will be taking lots of notes about how to do content marketing because she's doing it really well. Her content is very aligned, like what she's selling is very aligned with what she's offering for free from her audience. I didn't think she felt pushy or salesy. Like, I think there's just a lot to learn here. I just kind of recognize that a lot of creative types struggle with the business side and resent when someone mentions it at all because it brings up anxiety. So you should check out all of these channels. All of these channels are worth looking at. Jillian Perkins and Kat Theo and Mandy Lynn. But I did find for me that I loved how Mandy Lynn took the business side of things and really includes that in her process. I think I'll have a lot to learn there specifically as I'm focusing on helping indie authors support themselves more with their creative work. But I did want to dive into a little bit more of the marketing side of things and why the marketing side of things should be part of the step-by-step process. So again, I like Kat Theo has her like, I'll talk about promoting your work separately, right? A lot of people think about that as a separate process. And I think there are aspects of promotion that can be separate, but there's really two big steps of promotion that I wish even Mandy Lynn had gone in a little bit more. I think she touched on briefly. It's kind of an overview thing. And that the other two just completely ignored. So the first step that I wish people went into a little bit more is the know your audience. Mandy Lynn talks about that as like knowing the category and genre. Yeah, that's nice. I'll do a deeper dive into this myself because I think it's people talking about this tend to focus just on like the categories that you're going to check when you upload, and that's way too superficial. Basically, this first step of like knowing your audience, you should be joining groups not only of your genre, but like your specific niche, subgenre. You should be looking up reviews of specific similar books, seeing what people like, what people don't like, etc. So I will have a deeper dive video into that, so like, subscribe. I'll have a deeper dive video into that because I think that process you really should inform and take on as a constraint that you are delivering an experience that your readers want. That's how you sell a book, right? You are able to promise them what they want, right? If you can't promise that with your title and with your cover and with your blurb, they're not going to be interested in pick it up. And you need to be able to deliver on that. Trying to retrofit your book after you've written it to what other people want is just going to be painful, man. So like, try and intentionally adopt up front some things people want. That doesn't mean write only to the audience. Obviously, you want to be creative. You want to pick problems and issues and characters that resonate with you too. I don't think these things are mutually exclusive, but I think you should at least have a very specific idea of what experience you're selling to your audience and that it's something they're already buying. You'll have a lot more success. It's true of like general businesses that I would advise people to sell to a market where you already know people are buying solutions to that problem, but you have a better solution is kind of the idea. And it's the same thing, like go to a market where people are already buying the kind of experience that you want to write and give them, and show them how you have a unique spin on it that they don't get from other books. So let's see. So that was one step that was really overlooked. And I think another one that doesn't have to come right smack in the middle, but generally you want to do it as early as possible, is building a following. So this is touched again for like briefly when Mandy Lynn talks about, hey, there are books on like building a platform with social media. I disagree that this is, a small step or should not be a crucial step. If you want to build a business, especially if you're going to be an indie author, you're going to have a platform, and a platform takes time to build. So if you, again, leave the promotion part to the end and only do it infrequently right after you've done a book, you'll have a hard time as a business person, like, selling books and making a living. And so just to give you an example of the power of this, right? Daniel Green has a fantasy review channel. I don't know if he includes sci-fi in that, I forget. But he did a video on, like, the income he got from his first novel, and, like, spoilers, like, 6 figures income on his first novel release, which is crazy. And he kept saying, but I have an unfair advantage. I think referring to the fact that he already had a large platform on YouTube. Like, I would much rather that authors didn't think that was like an extra supplemental step, but like having a platform is part of the business. It's not that you have an unfair advantage, it's that you actually have a business, which most authors don't. They have like a creative project and then a hobby selling that to small audiences, occasionally. And so really it doesn't mean that your platform has to be as large and as intensive as like a YouTube review channel, but you ought to have one. So successful authors, I don't even know if, all of these authors are writing full time, but they're at least regularly selling their novels, right? They're getting a good part-time income from doing the things they love, are people who have done this. And typically it's at least engaging at least once a week for a year would be like kind of the minimum expectation of this sort of platform. So I hope to interview an author later on in this channel who wrote a cyberpunk novel, and as part of that founded a cyberpunk news group, and didn't actually affiliate that, I think, with themselves, but just saw there was like a lot of cyberpunk groups on Facebook. So like once a week did a post on the cyberpunk news in terms of like, the latest movie or book coming out. And then that formed a plan, like a channel through which they could get beta readers. I'm sure that helped him stay in touch with what was happening in cyberpunk and what people wanted, what people liked, right? Kind of naturally, some of that user research was ongoing, I imagine, as he built that following, and then that informed his promotion, etc. And that's even without saying, I am an author, buy my stuff in the group. So, another one that I heard, and you'll probably hear these examples a couple times, but there's another hard sci-fi author that answered a lot of science questions on Quora, and just had a link to their website and newsletter in their bio. And so they built their newsletter out with that, and now every time they release a book, they have a newsletter platform to build it out, to send it out to. So, those are examples. That should be part of writing a book, is building the audience of people you're going to sell it to. And I don't know how quickly I'm trying to build an audience for this channel. It's kind of meta to, in the next few months, build an audience for my novella, but I'm also going to try and do that so you guys can follow along and kind of see behind the curtains what that might look like in the writing process. So, my huge takeaway is there's a lot of good advice on the mechanics of releasing a book, and kind of just like very basic steps. But the business, like a lot of authors really procrastinate the business side. They're afraid to get into that. And what I hope to do with this channel, part of my whole mission of making it easier for indie authors to be able to support themselves, is to show you how you can leverage your inner geek to overcome that shoulder demon of like insecurity and fear of marketing yourself. That like marketing has to be other. Yes, we're oversaturated by all sorts of terrible advertising and marketing, which is why a lot of us develop this visceral reaction against, how dare you market to me? But really, when you're doing it well as a part of the process of your group, a lot of your marketing and building a platform will not even be promoting yourself. It'll be geeking out about your inspirations, or like geeking out about some of your ideas. Like relatively little of it has to be promoting your book. In fact, there's a rule in marketing that, you should never have a post primarily selling more than like every 6 or 7 posts, right? So most of your content. So really the key is like having a platform to geek out to regularly is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about like building a platform in business. I'm not talking about being awkward and slimy and salesy. So those are kind of my takeaways. There needs to be more of that business. There needs to be a lot of that really helps other introverts or people with social anxiety or anxiety around marketing. I think there's probably a lot more of the writing process that needs to be focused on that. And hopefully I'll fill in some of that, and I'll be doing a ton of research again from Mandy Lin, who I thought was especially helpful in thinking through more clearly the business side of things. Good luck in your writing, and let's build a better internet for creators and fans.